everybody, welcome back. No need for fanfare, it's win 50, baby. Starting with 3 HP. This, dude, what a perfect seed to start on. No, this is not a perfect seed to start on, is it? I just picked Isaac. J7NZFGQV. Literally, I was like, my stats are so average. Turns out, there is a need for some fanfare. I apologize, but also I know nobody cares that we picked Isaac by accident here. Look, I'll be the first to fall on the sword and tell you that Isaac is much easier to win with than Eden, just because you start with HP, and then the D6 is good. There is a chance, if I were being intentionally misleading, there is a chance that an Eden run would make you insanely overpowered, and thus make this Isaac run look like it's like nothing, you know, like it's a piece of crap. However, realistically, we probably did give ourselves an advantage by picking Isaac. So I apologize, it was an honest mistake. Do you ever feel, and this is a heavy topic for early on here, there's a little smugness radiating off of this anecdote. It's not really an anecdote, it's a philosophy, which is even worse. An anecdote actually has like at least one real world experience to base it on. Philosophy is like, hey, I cooked this up in my bedroom without ever running it by a real human being. You ever think that part of the problem with the world, not all of the problem, but part of the problem with the world is that well-meaning people build in like a lot of outs and understanding and tolerance into the way that they message, you know what I mean? Whereas people that are actually just, you know, kind of like they have ill meaning or are bad people or are trying to manipulate, speak in absolute terms. Like I feel like I guess I shouldn't you know, self-aggrandize. I mean, I'm exemplifying the point right now. I'm not saying I'm necessarily an amazing person. But again, even just by saying that, I feel like, you know, there's a certain proportion of the population that would hear that and go like, oh, he's a bad person. He's just admitting he's not necessarily a good person. But, you know, what I'm actually doing is like, oh, I don't want to come across too much like I'm being, oh, Mr. Nice Guy, we think you doth protest too much or whatever, right? Whereas I feel like a bad person would just be like, I'm a great person. Don't even look into it. I do all sorts of amazing stuff that I won't bore you with. You know? I wonder about that sometimes. I don't want to start off on such a cynical... Oh, I'll take it. On such a cynical bit that's like, you know, people don't know enough to critically think about the message they're receiving sometimes. But sometimes I am like, you know... Public figures will say something that doesn't pass the smell test. You know, it comes across like an obvious lie. But then people like, you know, some people are like, that's a lie. And then some people are like, excuse me, how dare you accuse that person of lying? And you're like, well, he said they lifted up Mount Everest. That's just not even... If he said it, look, he tells it like it is. I do think about it sometimes, and I'm like... I worry sometimes that, well, and worry is not really the right word. I wonder sometimes if, I'm trying to think about how to phrase it. It's not like a prickly conversation necessarily. I just want to be very considered in my dialect. You know, again, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but, you know, when I was in high school, I was insanely confident in my knowledge. I thought I was maybe one of the smartest people in the world. That's a slight exaggeration, but still. That is, I just want to make sure that's Judas's shadow and not my shadow. My shadow is upside down. What do you got for me? So I think we like this. I think we re-roll this. I think we use this. In hindsight, I'd rather have the caffeine pill, but I think we're happy where we stand. We're not going to throw this run away for nothing. As I, you know, got more of an education, you get exposed to other perspectives, people who are smarter than you, people who are more experienced than you. And it really, for a lot of people at least for me, it built in this idea that, like, I can be confident in some of the stuff that I say, but I know that it's not always right. I always try to build in, like, an out, not out of cowardice, but rather out of the understanding that, you know, I can have an opinion on something, but some other people's opinions might contradict that, or even, you know, their professional discipline might they have the opposite opinion of that. And I feel like in some ways that endears me to a certain chunk of the population that's like, hey, this guy is like empathetic in the way that he speaks about this stuff. And to 1% of the population, they go, this guy never says what he feels. It's not the case. I'm just maybe guilty of over-saucing the words a little bit. I wouldn't dispute that. But I guess it depends. Like, how do you want your messaging to come across? Do you want your messaging to come across as the most persuasive as possible to the broadest amount of people? Or do you want, you know, to feel good about the things you're saying? I don't know. It's kind of a heady topic for an Isaac episode, but I have been thinking about that. The idea that, you know, if other people are playing by dirty tricks... I mean, you know what it comes down to? It's more like, I don't know, we don't need to get into it too much, but think about, like, media literacy a lot now. As, like, and we don't even have to make this into, like, you know, an anti-mask sort of thing, but, you know, I think about how... it's clear that such a large percentage of the population, like, just doesn't know how to critically read the news. And I don't mean like have analysis of it, like in the way that you would do like a review of like a David Foster Wallace novel. I mean, like, literally, I'm not saying the average person, but so many people out there literally, like, cannot tell the difference between they don't see a difference between, like, you know, the New York Times and, you know, Jim's politics blog. Jim is like a 55-year-old retired civil engineer who has opinions, and then, like, this is a real outlet that has, like, reporters that go out. They do, you know, journalistic accounting. They've got, you know, teams of fact checkers and stuff like that. And what you end up with is like, well, yeah, sure. You know, the Los Angeles Times said this, but, you know, TomPolitic.com says this. So really, like, who are we supposed to believe? So I think, like, that's part of it. I also, and dude, this is gonna sound prophetic maybe, or maybe like I'm revisionist history. You can go back, there's so many NLSS's and so many Isaac episodes from like 5 years ago where we talk about things like, you know, like what part of growing up on the internet was coming to this like mature, oh, that's so good, thank you. Coming to this mature realization that there is like an infinite well of things on the internet that will oh, you know what? We should probably nuke ourselves down here and then get Judas's shadow popping. That seems like the way to go. Okay, let's do that. I'm glad we at least acknowledged before we made too many mistakes there. But I think when on the internet, like, I think it's a really good habit to get into. If you see news that you agree with wholeheartedly, think carefully about the source that it's coming from. That's not to say you should only read stuff you disagree with, but it is to say, like, hey, you know, if I exclusively read news outlets who, like, 100% completely, like, reinforce what I already believe and get me, you know, angry or, you know, whatever, like any of those really, like, strong top-level emotions, I'm not saying stop reading them, but just consider, like, hey, am I reading, like, a reputable newspaper or, you know, website that's been around for a long time and, you know, seeks to present the world as it is? Or am I maybe reading something that has an agenda and benefits from me being angry all the time? I also, and again, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. This is just anecdotal stuff that I think about. And again, I'm not saying I'm the superior media viewer. You know, I definitely... You know, I will occasionally seek out media that makes me upset, and then later on I'm like, you know, because you ever get that thing where, like, everybody's been baited by, like, satire from time to time? The number one way that I see it is when somebody, like, they accidentally get got by the onion. That's the way that you can tell that in that mode right there, they're not being a critical media viewer. You know, instead they're like, you know, Taco Bell is gonna start running FEMA? This is ridiculous. And they tweet it out to, like, their followers. And then, like, later they're like, okay, now I understand. Why wouldn't you use the Joker there? You know, that's a person that's like, I believe this wholeheartedly because it already reinforces what I'm believing. So I'm not trying to be dour. I'm just, you know... Basically, I'm saying frick Facebook, dude. I really believe that, like, the other fallacy that I'm seeing a lot lately, and again... You're probably like, just say what you mean. Hey, I'm building in the... I'm trying to avoid the Dunning-Kruger effect, where just because I have an audience and opinions... It means that I know what I'm talking about when really this is all just, you know, scuttlebutt. But I really believe that people have an innate, maybe it's cultural here, but they have an innate belief that nothing is ever as good as it seems, and nothing's ever as bad as it seems. Like, if we lived in heaven, they would be like, yeah, but the Emmental's not as good as it was back home. And if we lived in, you know, the underworld, burning for eternity, they would be like, yeah, but it's a dry heat, you know? Like, and maybe it's just an innate human thing. They always look for the positive in the negative, and they look for a little negative in the positive. But I do think that it affects people's belief on things. They always believe that things are more moderate than they actually appear. Like, I don't know, I really do feel like we're coming pretty close to the world right now where, like, if the big earthquake hit or Yellowstone erupted, I almost, 100% for real, I almost called it Jellystone. Like, out of Yogi Bear. Anyway, a little levity in the midst of this misanthropy. I 100%, well, I'm 72% starting to believe that if it erupted... and it blanketed, you know, the entire Western Hemisphere in a coat of ash that prevented solar energy from reaching the ground in enough quantities and concentrations to allow agriculture to continue. Like, a lot of people would be like, this is the apocalypse. And then some people would be like, oh, that's just what they want you to believe, you big baby. Human life will still continue to exist in a series of caves out in the Eastern Hemisphere. I don't know why you're... You know, just because, like, our entire way of life here is being destroyed by a natural disaster, you know, doesn't mean that everybody... It's not all about you, sweetheart. Come on, you know? I do believe that there's kind of an over emphasis on the idea that, like, you know, things are never as good as they seem, or it's never as bad as they seem. And by the way, they're both annoying. I'm not saying that, like, everybody should be like, oh, you know, a doomer at all times, you know? But I'm also, you know, the opposite is very true. When things are going really well and they're like, yeah, but, you know, it's gonna end eventually. You're like, yeah, just shut up and enjoy it, weirdo. Anyway, so that's my, you know, that's what's been getting to me lately. I'm in a great mood, to be honest with you. And the thing is, you might think like, oh, this is a reflection of the fact that you're not in a great mood. It's not the case at all. You know, these thoughts have been bubbling up since I was 14 years old, basically. Just happened to come out in conversation here. I'm feeling, the only emotion I'm feeling right now is hunger. But it's not that bad, because I know I'll eat later. Yeah, but my lunch is probably not going to be the best lunch I've ever had, so why even bother? Anyway, it's just exhausting. That's what I'm getting at, it's just exhausting. I've been meaning to watch, and I know, like, there's been some divisive opinions on this, but I've been meaning to watch that Netflix documentary, the social something. It's not The Social Network, but it's about, like, the rise of social media. I really think it's done something to... I think it's exploited something in the human brain, I'll admit. And I'm not saying I'm immune to it. Again, it's much like YouTuber biases. I'm not immune to it, but I'm at least cognizant of it. It puts me literally one step above the primordial ooze, which is where I'm most comfortable. Okay, now we will take Mom's knife, yes. This is we're gonna get 50 wins in a row. This one doesn't really count because we're Isaac, but I'm gonna count it anyway. Alright, let me out here. I think it's like, you know, I don't know. I think it's just that the human brain is like, you know, we're wired to be such social animals, but we were also not wired to, you know, live in a, you know, a group of like, you know, 500 million people constantly having access to everybody's opinions and beliefs and like, you know, well-meaning but misinformed people, and then on top of that, people who are not well-meaning and are deliberately seeking to misinform. You know, it's like it's a strange environment. In some ways, I think I'm well equipped for this world that we live in. Like you know, some people out there are like, yo, man, I would love for there to be like an apocalypse or something. I think I would do so well. That I always found that very weird. But I also understand it, because in some way you feel maybe maladapted to the world that we live in, you know? Similarly, I'm definitely not one of those guys that's like, oh, I wish I lived in, you know, the Middle Ages or something, because, like, you know, physical strength and, you know, being a blacksmith was, like, way more appreciated back then. I, on the other hand, I feel like very well equipped. I'm good at talking. I endeavor as much as possible to create jokes with the words that exit my mouth. You wouldn't know it from this video, but anyway, you get the idea. Like I'm built for brunches and podcasts and so on and so forth. That being said, sometimes I do think about, like, man, what would it be like to actually, like, put yourself in the shoes of somebody from, like, the 1930s, right? And, like, in the 1930s, people were, like, I mean, okay, let me move it forward a little bit. Let me say 1960s, okay? So in the 1960s, people would be like, I want to go on, like, a once-in-a-lifetime vacation to France or Italy or whatever, you know? And just enjoy being there. What percentage of people now would be like, I would, like, you know what? I think I've constructed the gambit. Okay, you ready for this? This one's going to infuriate people. What if, well, I'm trying to think about how to set it up. Because I don't want it to be too easy. I'll let you know that what I'm trying to set up is a situation where, like, you know, you get your dream vacation, but you're not allowed to have access to the internet or a telephone while you're there. Would you still do it? But what I'm worried about is that as of right now, I'm creating... Oh, I'm so stupid! I'm worried that I'm creating one of those situations that's like, you know, you have to watch a movie for 24 hours, but if you do, you get $1 trillion. Would you do it? Those ones are like insanely easy. What I think is like a little bit more difficult is like, you know, what if I said like, hey, we'll give you like a 1-week vacation, but over the course of that 1-week vacation, you're not allowed to look at the internet. You're not allowed to look at your phone, anything like that. There's definitely people that would do it because, you know, I mean, those people are campers. But even then, you still kind of got access to, like, electronics. But I just wonder, like... And this is I've talked about it before, the idea that I don't necessarily believe people are dishonest about stuff like this, but I believe that sometimes they misrepresent what their actual, like, brain is enjoying. Like, what do you think people would enjoy? What do you think fires more neurons? Doom scrolling through Twitter, or like sitting on a Tuscan villa's balcony drinking like a delicious red wine or something like that? I honestly think for like an hour it would be Tuscany, no question. But I think if you got to like day 5, I almost wonder if there isn't like some kind of like neurotransmitter withdrawal that people go through, where they're like, you know, this is being in paradise is all well and good, but I also kind of like, I just want to scroll right now and like see, you know, what kind of stuff I can get mad about. And I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a flaw of like, you know, the current generation or whatever. I think it's just some, I really feel like we're in that period right now where like, you know, social media is obviously like here to stay for the time being, but we're like, we were ill-adapted to it at the start, and now people are starting to kind of, myself included, are starting to kind of wake up to it a little bit. Not that it's like something that needs to be, you know, mass exodus from necessarily, but waking up to the idea that, hey, maybe like having unfettered access to the opinions of everybody's uncle worldwide is not something we need at all times. Maybe the human brain wasn't really... I don't think we want anything here. I think... Why... No, we're on the womb. Sorry, this whole run has been twisted up. I didn't even realize we were this far down. I honestly think we take nothing and we just coast this one in. I should have taken the HP and then Little Brim, but... anyway, I'm not trying to rail against social media. And this really isn't from a position of, like, you know... things being bad for me. If any, the community's been really good lately. You have frustrations with it now and then, the same way you're like, you know, work was great today. Yeah, you know, somebody in HR was kind of, you know, a jerk today. You get over it. I think about it from time to time. Because, I mean, and it's relevant, you know, no longer is it just, you know, like, intellectual thinking for the sake of it, you know? You think about how we're going to, like, introduce our child to social media. I don't know. Definitely not early. I get weirded out, and you know, I don't know. We'll see how much information we actually let get out there, but like once we have the child and you know decide you know what we want to share with people and what we want to keep private. But I get really weirded out, like you know, because Kate watches a lot of videos about pregnancy and you know. Early childhood rearing and stuff like that. You know, she gets recommended like a lot of mommy blog stuff on YouTube. And don't get me wrong, the videos are interesting, but I do always wonder, like, how are these kids gonna feel about it when they get older? I think that some of the kids are gonna be totally fine with it. I think they're gonna be like, that's cool. And I think the other thing is, like, as an adult, you're not that screwed up about it. Look, again, I'm not a psychologist, but I feel like the really bad period for it is a child's teenage years and adolescence, right? Where you're like, you know, you're already so concerned about like looking cool and, you know, like maintaining some kind of respect and status in your social group and stuff like that, and then also there's like an endless font of all of your embarrassing baby moments out there, or maybe the opposite happens and it's so normalized that everybody's like baby videos and toddler videos where they poop their pants and throw temper tantrums are out there that everybody's like, yeah, dude, you don't be a weirdo, everybody's got that out there. I don't know. I'm kind of like, I'm okay. My parents have home videos and it's cool. You know, sometimes as a teenager, I hated when they watched them because I was like, I don't want to ever believe that I was like, you know, a baby. I came out of here a fully formed man. You know, but you know, I'm happy that they have them. But if you know, my parents had filmed and released thousands of hours of my childhood for YouTube, I would be like a little upset. I think because you don't have it's kind of that catch-22, right? You don't have a choice in the matter. Now the thing is, you can never really have a choice, an informed choice in the matter, because it's not like you can be like you travel forward through time to when your kid is 40 and be like, hey, is it okay if I put videos of you on the internet? Yeah, you get back in the time machine and do it, right? Because, and the reason you can't do it is because if you did it, it would change causality and it would be all screwed up, you know? You wouldn't be talking to the same person 40 years later. You'd be talking to a new person affected by the decision that they made in the first place, and thus they couldn't give their permission, you know, knowledgeably. Anyway, it's nothing to do with the science of time travel, which is very possible, of course. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. The mommy blog stuff, it freaks me out, dude. I should be clear as well. It's not really like if your mommy blog is like, you know, top 10 tips for nursing, whatever. But if you're like, hey, 5 days a week I release a video of like going to the park with my kids. I want to be clear. Sure, there's probably like a big weirdo element out there as well. That is, you know, another reason you would reconsider. But there's also an element of like, you know, you let the kid be a kid. And also like your whole career is based on like your... kid being... I understand how it goes, by the way, because like it's not like when you started it, you're like, oh, this is going to be my new job. You know, you started, and then for some reason, the YouTube algorithm picks it up, and you're like, wow, I'd be stupid not to try it. But still, it's like your whole career is predicated upon, you know, having a 4-year-old. What happens? I mean, you're not going to be filming that kid when they're 16. That's going to be... I mean, to be honest, I'd be way more likely to watch it. It sounds like the sparks are going to fly, but... I don't know, it's just weird for me. Very judgmental, I'll admit, but, you know, it's the things you gotta make some tough decisions and come up with some philosophies and guidelines when you're going to be in this situation yourself. Anyway, we're on the chest here. This is 2 insanely fast Isaac runs I've recorded today. I almost caught myself there. I was getting mad that the items down here were not that good. Then I thought to myself, you know what? First off, you didn't even pick the right character. Secondly, I don't have a secondly. Secondly, the items are great, I guess. We do have Judas' Shadow, or we have become Dark Judas, I guess, to be clearer. Either way, you know, this is going to be 50 wins. That's pretty exciting. I cannot recall... You know what? Please just hit me if you can. I cannot recall what our best streak of 2020 was. How many days are we into 2020? 3,000? No, okay, I'm thinking. So we're at the middle of September. So there have been 8 full months, which is like roughly 240 days, plus a half. Okay. It's been about 255 days. We gotta be getting close. I think it might have been in the 60s. Either way, we're knocking on the door. It's been an amazing year for Isaac gameplay. Not so much for Isaac releases, but... I mean, I bet... I'm trying to think, because I honestly, I have no memory of January and February. I have, like, vague recollections of going to the gym and being like, I think New Year's resolutions are cool. And then, like, bam, you get hit in the face with a sock full of quarters. Followed by a sock full of nickels, followed by a sock full of dimes. And then a sock full of love. No, maybe phrasing, we could have worked on that one. But, either way, I don't remember how we played Isaac back in the day. Were we doing well? Pre-COVID? I can't remember. However... I bet we've lost Isaac less than 12 times. I bet we lost less than 12 Isaac runs in 2020. And I am including that one video where we lost twice. That would give us like an average streak length of 20-something. Which is, admittedly, seems a little high until you remember, you know, we've had a few 20s for sure. We've had maybe a 60, we're on a 50, and, you know, we're getting pretty close to being at 200, and when you start adding these together, certainly I'm missing some more in the interim period as well. Easy wins! For now, thanks for watching. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you did, click the like button. That was a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. See ya!